Today is the 18th of July 2009. We are going through the Samyutta Nikaya Suttas. Now we come to the fifth Samyutta, which is the Bhikkhuni Samyutta. Bhikkhuni is nuns. The monks were called bhikkhus, the nuns were called bhikkhunis. So this chapter has all to do with the nuns. 5.4. At Savatthi, then in the morning, the Bhikkhuni Vijaya dressed and taking bowl and robe entered Savatthi for alms. When she had walked for alms in Savatthi and had returned from her alms round, after her meal she went to the blind man's grove for the day's abiding. Having plunged into the blind man's grove, she sat down at the foot of a tree for the day's abiding. Then Mara, the evil one, desiring to arouse fear, trepidation and terror in the Bhikkhuni Vijaya, desiring to make her fall away from concentration, approached her and addressed her in verse. You are so young and beautiful, and I too am a youth in my prime. Come, noble lady, let us rejoice with the music of a fivefold ensemble. Then it occurred to the Bhikkhuni Vijaya, now who is this that recited the verse, a human being or a non-human being? Then it occurred to her, this is Mara, the evil one, who has recited the verse desiring to arouse fear, trepidation and terror in me, desiring to make me fall away from concentration. Then the Bhikkhuni Vijaya, having understood this is Mara, the evil one, replied to him in verses, forms, sounds, tastes, odors and delightful tactile objects, I offer them right back to you, for I, O Mara, do not need them. I am repelled and humiliated by this foul, putrid body, subject to break up, fragile. I have uprooted sensual craving. As to those beings who fare amidst form, and those who abide in the formless, and those peaceful attainments too, everywhere darkness has been destroyed. Then Mara, the evil one, realizing the Bhikkhuni Vijaya knows me, sad and disappointed, disappeared right there. That's the end of the sutta. So this young beautiful nun, she was alone in the deep forest, and this Mara came to try to frighten her. During the Buddha's earlier days of the Buddha's ministry, when the Sangha was new, the Buddha allowed nuns to live alone. And later, many of the nuns were raped. So after that, the Buddha did not allow nuns to stay alone. Did not allow them to go into the forest alone and all that. So this Bhikkhuni Vijaya was already an arahant when Mara came. So that's why she said, I am repelled and humiliated by this foul, putrid body. Most of us, we are very proud of our body. We think we are so beautiful or handsome. But in the case of this arahant, she is repelled by her own body. You can see that the body is so dirty. And she says that she has uprooted sensual craving as to those beings who fare amidst form and in the formless. That means she has no desire to be reborn in the form realm or the formless realm. So Mara left her alone. 5.5 Sutta is about Upalavana. The Buddha has two chief nun disciples, just like Sariputta and Moggallana representing the monks. The two nuns, the two chief nuns are Kema and Upalavana. Kema was foremost among the nuns in wisdom, and Upalavana was foremost in psychic powers. In the sutta, sometimes we find Upalavana, she comes to visit the Buddha in the middle of the night, around midnight. and she flies using her psychic power. And sometimes when she comes, she finds that the Buddha is occupied with devas. Then she stands in the mid-air waiting. When the Buddha is free, then she comes down to talk to the Buddha. And generally the Buddha did not talk much to the nuns except to the Arahants. So at Savatthi, in the morning, the Bhikkhuni Upalavana dressed and taking bowl and robe entered Savatthi for alms. Then after she had eaten, she went into the blind man's grove as before. And she stood at the foot of a sal tree in full flower. Then Mara, the evil one, desiring to arouse fear, trepidation and terror in the Bhikkhuni Upalavana, desiring to make her fall away from concentration, approached her and addressed her in verse. Having gone to a sal tree with flowering top, you stand at its foot all alone, Bhikkhuni. There is none whose beauty rivals yours. Foolish girl, aren't you afraid of ropes? Then it occurred to the Bhikkhuni Upalavana, now who is this? And she realized, this is Mara, the evil one, desiring to make me fall away from concentration. Then the Bhikkhuni Upalavana, having understood, this is Mara, the evil one, replied to him in verses, though 100,000 rogues, just like you, might come here, I stir not a hair, I feel no terror. Even alone, Mara, I don't fear you. I can make myself disappear, or I can enter inside your belly. I can stand between your eyebrows, yet you won't catch a glimpse of me. I am the master of my mind. The basis of psychic power are well developed. I am freed from all bondage. Therefore, I don't fear you, friend. Then Mara, the evil one, realizing the Bhikkhuni Upalavana knows me, sad and disappointed, disappeared right there. So you see what the Upalavana said, that she can disappear and enter Mara's stomach, belly, and stand between his eyebrows and all that. Her psychic power was very great. So that's why she was not afraid of Mara. 5.9 at Savatthi. Then in the morning, the Bhikkhuni Sela dressed as before. She went on alms round, and after alms round, entered the deep forest. And then she sat down at the foot of a tree for the day's abiding. Then Mara, the evil one, desiring to arouse fear, trepidation and terror in the Bhikkhuni Sela, desiring to make her fall away from concentration, approached her and addressed her in verse. By whom has this puppet been created? Who is the maker of the puppet? Where has the puppet arisen? Where does the puppet cease? Then it occurred to the Bhikkhuni Sela, now who is this? And then she realized, this is Mara, the evil one, desiring to make me fall away from concentration. Then the Bhikkhuni Sela, having understood, this is Mara, the evil one, replied to him in verses, this puppet is not made by itself, nor is this misery made by another. It has come to be dependent on the cause. With the cause's break-up, it will cease. As when a seed is sown in a field, it grows depending on a pair of factors. It requires both the soil's nutrients and a steady supply of moisture. Just so, the aggregates and elements, and these 6 bases of sensory contact, have come to be dependent on the cause. If the causes break up, they will cease. Then Mara, the evil one, realizing the Bhikkhuni Sela knows me, sad and disappointed, disappeared right there. So this another Arahant, and she says, this puppet, that means this body, is not made by anyone. It arises due to causes and conditions, and it will cease due to causes and conditions. The next sutta, 5.10. At Savatthi, then in the morning the Bhikkhuni Vajira dressed, and taking bowl and robe entered Savatthi for alms. When she had walked for alms in Savatthi and had returned from her alms round, after her meal she went to the blind man's grove for the day's abiding. Having plunged into the blind man's grove, she sat down at the foot of a tree for the day's abiding. Then Mara, the evil one, desiring to arouse fear, trepidation and terror in the Bhikkhuni Vajira, desiring to make her fall away from concentration, approached her and addressed her in verse. By whom has this being been created? Where is the maker of the being? Where has the being arisen? Where does the being cease? Then it occurred to the Bhikkhuni Vajira, now who is this that recited the verse, a human being or a non-human being? Then it occurred to her, this is Mara, the evil one, who has recited the verse desiring to arouse fear, trepidation and terror in me, desiring to make me fall away from concentration. Then the Bhikkhuni Vajira, having understood this is Mara, the evil one, replied to him in verses, why now do you assume a being, Mara? This is your speculative view. Is that your speculative view? This is a heap of sheer formations. Here no being is found. Just as with the assemblage of parts, the word chariot is used, so when the aggregates exist, there is the convention of a being. It is only suffering that comes to be, suffering that stands and falls away. Nothing but suffering comes to be, nothing but suffering ceases. Then Mara, the evil one, realizing the Bhikkhuni Vajira knows me, sad and disappointed, disappeared right there. Yeah. So these verses of this Arahant Vajira are also very interesting. He says, why do you assume that there is a being? He says there is no being. Just like a chariot, a horse chariot, when all the parts are put together, you call it a chariot. But when you take apart all the parts of the chariot, there is no chariot. It is just a condition, a temporary condition. So in the same way, our body and our mind, the five aggregates, when you put them together, you think that there is a being. But one day, because it's a temporary condition, one day it will all fall apart. And so there is ultimately no being, because everything is impermanent. There's no thing in our body or in our mind that does not change. So because it is a constant flux of conditions, there's no thing we can identify as ourselves that doesn't change. That's why this principle of anatta in Buddhism, sometimes they translate as soul. It's not that there is no soul, it's that there is no permanent thing that does not change. Everything is a flux. We come to the next Samyutta, number 6, Brahma Samyutta. These Brahmas are heavenly beings. They are in the first jhana plane, the lowest of the form realm. And they have great psychic power. According to the Suttas, the light they emit is so powerful, it reaches 1,000 world systems, and that is the minimum. And sometimes reach 10,000 world systems, and sometimes even more. So the first sutta, thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was dwelling at Uruvela on the bank of the river Naranjara, at the foot of the goat herd's banyan tree, just after he had become fully enlightened. Then while the Blessed One was alone in seclusion, a reflection arose in his mind thus: this Dhamma that I have discovered is deep, hard to see, hard to understand, peaceful and sublime, not within the sphere of reasoning, subtle, to be experienced by the wise. But this generation delights in adhesion. Here adhesion means clinging. Takes delight in adhesion, rejoices in adhesion. For such a generation, this state is hard to see. That is, specific conditionality, dependent origination. And this state too is hard to see. That is, the stilling of all formations, the relinquishment of all acquisitions. Here, acquisitions, also another translation, is attachments. Relinquishment of all attachments, the destruction of craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. If I were to teach the Dhamma and if others would not understand me, that would be wearisome for me, that would be troublesome. Thereupon these astounding verses, not heard before in the past, occurred to the Blessed One. Enough now with trying to teach. What I found with so much hardship, this Dhamma is not easily understood by those oppressed by lust and hate. Those fired by lust, obscured by darkness, will never